Well, once again, Tuesday. It's not a trivial day, and that's when we do the CQ, which means please pay attention. This is a busy day, and hopefully you'll take just a few minutes to learn something new, perhaps to learn something helpful, or perhaps just to be inspired, or perhaps just because it's kind of interesting. And it's always good to find something interesting, maybe even inspirational, that can at least make for a better day. And obviously we need better days because these are challenging times. And yes, today I want to go back many, many years and remember, and this is exactly the story. We spat on them. We spat on them for their service. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, that's the story for today. And I hope you'll take a few minutes just to hear a little of repentance and perhaps a way that we can still honor people who need honoring. I'm Stan Houston. The program is Interesting Ideas, and it begins right now. Well, here we go. Today's May 2nd. And you have to go back about 48 years ago. A number of us thought it was 50, but no, it only turned out to be 48. And I was a young man, and the Vietnamese War was just coming to an end. And it was a tragic time. And so let me tell you a little bit about that and perhaps make a recommendation. Now, if you are of my generation, the Vietnam War defined our lives. First of all, obviously for the millions of my age who fought in the war, and for the families that suffered, and I have some very tragic stories about a family friend. I knew him, I knew his family, he was in our church, he was a good friend, and died tragically in Vietnam, and the story is so sad. His family was so worried. They knew that the fighting was going on in the region that he was at, and they had prayed about it and thought about it, and the father remembers telling me that he had said to his wife and to his family, well, if we don't hear anything about David today, we'll probably know that he's okay. And just about as they said that, they looked up and saw the two officers, the two Marine officers, walking up the steps. And obviously, you know what that meant. So that's part of the story of my youth. And those of us who didn't serve, and it was obviously up and down and back and forth. We were eligible for the draft, and then we had a deferment for students. Then we were eligible for the draft, and then something else happened. So not all of us were affected by it. And so not affected by it, but it affected us because we had to make plans about it. We had to do something about it. We had to figure out what we were going to do with our life with that as part of who we were. And I'm very honest, that's part of the reason I kind of jumped into a teaching right away, which became a part of my career, is for some reason the school district that hired me or wanted to hire me said, we really need you, and we can appeal to your draft board and give you a 1-year deferment to help with the class. And that's what I did, and went from there. So that's how it affected us all. And of course, there are thousands of people. And then we went later on through the various big controversy of the Vietnam Memorial. And you really need to look at the story of how that came about. It's a fascinating story, an inspiring story of how the Vietnam Memorial came to be and how it turned out to be, as it still is, one of the most visited places in the Washington, D.C. tourist attractions. And every year it is right there. And it has been for millions of families, and that's not an exaggeration, millions of families and many, many, many men, and some women, of course, not as many, but some women, of course, who fought in the war and who lost friends in the war, who lost family in the war, to find a place of healing. And so all of that is part of it. Now see, what happened is Saigon fell. April 30th, then May 1st, May 2nd. It was just about now that the whole thing fell apart. After many, many years of warfare, after thousands of people dying, and many thousands, perhaps even millions of Vietnamese who died, the capital of South Vietnam, Saigon, the forces of North Vietnam overran the capital, somewhat even reminiscent of the situation in Afghanistan. And that's why you have to understand that why Afghanistan was so sad for so many people, because the way it was handled made it look, in fact, it did look like people hanging on to airplanes, hanging on to helicopters as they were trying to escape from the coming of the North Vietnamese. And through, April 30th, May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd, the collapse took place. And obviously, many of the men who had served and bled and died and thousands wounded looked up and said, "My God, we did all that we did, and it was for nothing. It saved nothing." And those were the times. And perhaps we can kind of remember those times now. Now, part of the reason this came to me is that I knew it was about this time, and also our pastor in our church also had mentioned it was about this time, except that he remembered it wrong, even though he was quite a bit younger. He said, it's 50 years now, isn't it? And I said, well, that could be so. I said, well, let's do something. We got to help people remember. Well, it turns out it's 48 years. It's not, because it was 1975 rather than 1973. But then I got to thinking, by the time we get to, 2025, and it is 50 years, a lot of the Vietnamese veterans will be dead. And so I thought, maybe we should start right now at this time of the year, April 30th, May 1st, May Day, because here's the case, and many of you know it was true if you somewhat experienced it or had family who experienced it. But many of the men and women who came back, they had served their term in Vietnam. And they came back in the airports, on the cities, on the street. People would even spit on them. The anti-war movement was so powerful and had become kind of violent and disruptive, is that the men and women who obviously didn't have anything except they had to go fight, they were harassed. Things were thrown at them. Names were called, baby killer, you name it, instead of being welcomed home and thank you for your service and having their house, put with welcome home signs. As one guy told me, he said, we literally had to try and get rid of our uniforms as quick as we could and sneak back into the country. Well, that's what happened. And so I think it might be appropriate that an interesting idea could be that we should start whenever we see a Vietnam veteran, we should maybe say, it was many years ago, and when you were young and coming home, many of you were spat on, and you weren't welcomed. and no one thanked you for your service. So right now, we'd like to thank you and say we're sorry. And we wish you all the best in what time is left to you. And we wish you all the best and blessings on you and your family. And again, we're sorry. I think we ought to do something like that. So on this Tuesday, and I don't know how much exposure this will get, but I think it's time because this is about when it happened, as the war came, and then the refugees, the boat people trying to escape, and that became a story in itself. And I can tell you stories of then really the refugees came, and these were real refugees. Obviously, everyone who's trying to get in at the southern border is claiming refugee status. Well, obviously, most of them are refugees from nothing. They're just trying to find a better experience in life and make more money or have better opportunity. And we don't blame them for that, but that really does not qualify technically for refugee status. But the people who left Vietnam obviously were refugees. And of course, now our country is by far the better for the thousands and millions of refugees who came. And they didn't ask for handouts. And in fact, they had to find people to sponsor them. And they started businesses and went to work. And of course, now they are very fully American and very fully Americanized. And many of them, along with their very strong families, are truly living the American dream. Just thought it was something to talk about on this Tuesday. Certainly nothing trivial about Tuesday today. Hey, all the best. Let me do a little break, and then I'll be back with a little bit of a pitch. Thank you so much. Interesting Ideas with Stan Houston. Right now, the Ukraine refugee movement is taking place, and I was asked by one of my friends from the Ukraine. I actually helped them 2 years ago. They were a young couple, and they were working online in my little company at that time, and I was hiring them. I had come across them online, and I was hiring them. There was Alex and Nadia, and they were Ukrainian and Russian. They knew Russian, they knew Ukrainian, and there was a confluence of people. And so I actually had them working for me. And then as things for them, I helped them get to America. And they're doing great. And they will soon be citizens. Well, they're trying to pay it back, and so they are, in effect, trying to work with the Ukrainian refugees who are coming now. And they called me up and said, Stan, would you be helpful as best you can? And so that's exactly what I'm doing, trying to help the Ukrainian refugees make it back there, and praying and wishing for an end to that terrible, stupid war. Terrible, stupid war. Evil men and women. How can you doubt the existence of evil when you see what evil men and women can do to another? Hey, reach out to me. I can help you with a variety of things in life and business, because that's what we do, particularly get you on the radio, help you tell your story. And I've done a lot of work with new nonprofit and or even refugee organizations in helping them kind of get their business and performance act together, and certainly publicize the cause. StanHouston@gmail.com, StanHouston@gmail.com. gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. All the best and blessings, and God bless the refugees, the real refugees. Be with them and empower them and bring an end to this ugly war. Take care, my friends, and bye for now.